show the way. Many of you are exploring the true sayings of Jesus and the Bible through the Holy Currencies program on Tuesday evenings. And so today we delve into that currency of truth and allow ourselves to open up to these scriptures. I've spent the better part of the last 11 years of my ministry focusing on one interpretation or one aspect of these true sayings. The truth that within each one of us is the divine. That we in and of ourselves are beloved and that we are divine. Eric Law has brought a new perspective to that in his Holy Currencies that opened up for a whole new way of looking and perceiving these true sayings. His focus is on the spirit that is among us, not just the spirit that is within us. And so earlier on, and for many a year, I would say, we will only know the Spirit and be able to receive the Spirit that has been sent to us because we have the Spirit within us. Eric calls us to broaden that view and to be able to look at the perspective as we will only know the Spirit and be able to receive the Spirit if we know, see, and hear the Spirit that is among us. And so he opens up to the collective truth, not just the individual truth that sometimes can lead to the right and wrong, the me and you, the us and them, and opens up to that broader idea that there is a spirit that is among us, and when we can perceive it, when we can see it, when it's on the move within us and around us and between us, it is in those moments that we can open up to the greater truth that is wanting to be revealed. And so Eric Law does similar to what Rabbi Laura did earlier. There we go. He does a word study on the word of truth in two different ways. The first is in the Chinese symbol for truth, and the other is in the Hebrew word. And so for those of you who are part of the course or have read the book, you'll have read this piece. And so the Chinese symbol is the symbol of 10 on the top. The 3 lines within the box are the symbol of I, and the lower part is table. And so the symbol shows us that the symbol for truth is 10 eyes upon the table. 10 perspectives being looked at before we can actually even get to truth. Opening up to multiple perspectives that are beyond the I and the me, so that we might actually open up to a collective truth that is wanting to be revealed. In the Hebrew language, truth is written using these 3 symbols. These 3 symbols are the first, the middle, and the last of the Hebrew alphabet. And so once again, Eric calls us to look at a broader perspective that allows for us to look at truth being that which takes into consideration the beginning, the middle, and the end. Not just one moment, not just one perspective, but broadening our view. In reading through this and seeing this with Eric's book, I was reminded of this story that many of you may have heard in different workshops and seminars, and it's the story of the blind man and the elephant. And so the blind man and the elephant, a bunch of blind men live in a village, and an elephant comes to town, and so they all are trying to get the perspective of the elephant. And so the first, as he's holding the trunk, has one perspective, that it's like a long snake. The second is holding the leg and is feeling that perspective of it must be like a tree, like a big tree trunk. Or a fan from the other, or leather as he flaps the ear. Or a little mouse at the end of the tale. And so a wise sage comes along and says, you are all right, yet you are all wrong. That any truth is only a partial truth of this reality that is the elephant. I wonder if this is what Jesus is asking for his disciples to experience. That as they know the truth will set them free, but as they open up to the truth, is it just one way, one truth? How often have we in our own communities, in our own families, in our own tribes, in our own villages, only had a partial truth? Sometimes for those of us who live in this beautiful and abundant place of North America, have only the partial truth of prosperity. So even though we have homeless, we have people who live on our streets, do we truly understand that from our place, our bias, our perspective of privilege? Do we have the possibility and the ability to have 10 eyes on the table? So that we might include those voices from all perspectives in our conversations and in our truth. We seem to have this perception that the only way, the way, is gone out of our culture and out of our system. But I was struck as I listened to a beautiful video, one of our podcasts from Life, right? That Shauna sent me last night. It's a podcast that Joel and Andrea are putting together as part of the Provision Grant that Lynn Valley United received. And it's a podcast of a woman who went through a Master's of Divinity at Regent College. She came up here from the United States as a Korean American, as her self-identity, as a Christian, as a Korean American, as someone who had a deep faith in God, and went through the whole program. And the Regent program is more of an evangelical program, and so even that word in this circle might bring up judgment, thoughts, perspective of one kind. But the love and the admiration this woman had for her training that she went through in that program, and the community that was created around that, was deep and rich and powerful and filled with truth. And yet, as she began to discern her call to ministry alongside of discerning her gender and her sexual orientation, she began to wonder, can that part of my truth, can that perspective of my identity be present and aware and included in the conversation of cultivating my ministry? I wonder sometimes what voices we're willing to hear or to see and acknowledge as the Spirit on the move within us and among us. And I wonder what voices we hide from or that we are blind to as the blind men. That we can only see a partial truth, not a truth that sets us free. In the red tent, which many of us are exploring on Wednesday at the Seekers Gathering, there's a community of women that has gathered together to hold each other, to be with each other, to be a counterculture of truth beyond the male-dominated, hierarchical, imperial world in which they lived. And yet the cultivation of the truth that remained in their small circle 5,000 years later hasn't permeated our culture here today. We look back 5,000 years and there are those cultures, those small ways that people came together, women came together to know the truth and to be the truth for each other, and could feel the spirit of truth that is amongst them. Yet, Are we much farther along as a society? Are we living that world that Jesus spoke of 2,000 years ago that said, the way you will know the Spirit that I am sending you will be because you know the Spirit that is among you. So as we open up to that Spirit that is among us, let us open up to what that felt sense of the mystics knew, that the women of the Hebrew Bible time knew. Let us gather together and to see the Spirit in the face of the young carver upon the streets of Vancouver. We at Lynn Valley United have brought in the Circle Way as a way of bringing in the multiple perspectives, the voices of Spirit through the various ministries and portals and communities that gather. But in those moments, are we truly able to listen for the sake of hearing, not responding? Are we willing to open up our hearts and our minds to the other and ultimately allow that sense of other to simply fall away so that we know that the Spirit is in you and me and around and among us so that we might be set free? What is that Spirit of truth that is calling us? What is that Spirit that holds the multiple perspectives, that allows for, from those multiple perspectives, to be revealed that greater truth of the whole elephant? Not just the partial truth of each and everybody's opinions and biases and filters through which we live because of our life experience, the way we've always done it, life as we know it. And when we listen from that perspective, we don't hear. And then even though the Spirit is amongst us and at work within us, we miss it. We miss that perspective. And we still live in that sense of bondage, of slavery, that the questioning disciples asked, but we're not slaves. We're sons and daughters of Abraham. And yet, are we free? Are we free to truly listen, to open up to the greater truth that is being revealed through us as community, in the work that we do in social justice, in the work that we do in bringing forth and creating this amazing community on Friday nights, in this community that we're creating together, and as we reach out to be of service beyond the me and the my and the mine. We're in a generation where many believe for the first time we truly have the capacity, because of who we've evolved to be, to hold multiple perspectives at one time. But it takes discipline. It takes awareness for us to expand our circle of awareness, to be aware of the privilege that in each moment we hold because of where we grew up and how we live, and to be able to broaden that perspective, to take that higher view and to see and to hear the multiple voices. Over time, we're looking to create opportunities where we can hear those voices. We can bring the voices from the street into us so that we might see and hear. I leave you with this quote from Rumi. This quote that speaks to the promise of the Christ, that we are not alone, that we are not abandoned, that the Spirit is with us. And as we shed our biases and our filters and open up to the many voices and perspectives of God's Spirit at work through all, we can get closer to that collective truth that Eric Law speaks of. That truth that is beyond the me and mine, that truth that expands our horizons. the truth that can set us free. Out beyond all ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas and language and even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Thanks be to me. Thanks be to you. Thanks be to the Spirit that is among us and within us. Thanks be to God. Let us pray. Holy Spirit on the move within and among and around us. Call us into your brighter view. May we open our eyes to see, may we open our ears to hear. May we open our hearts to feel your Spirit in the voices of the powerful and the powerless, the quiet voices and the loud. May our hearts move to a place of holding, to move beyond what is right and good in my perspective, in our perspective, that we might be graced by the Spirit among us, always.